at the consulate in Benghazi. And also, we just learned that two Navy destroyers, the USS McFall and the USS Laboon, have been moved, or are going to be moved off the coast of Libya, according to senior defense officials, for, quote, contingency purposes. With that, two different events, Charles. And while the pretext was this video, this anti-Islam video, it did happen on 9/11, and now intelligence officials are saying the Benghazi attack was very coordinated and possibly tied to Al-Qaeda in some way.
Well, clearly the video was a pretext and it was an irrelevancy. The difference between the two events is that, number one, the Libya attack was clearly a terror attack, coordinated, sophisticated, with perhaps a demonstration attached as a diversion. In Cairo, it was a mob, again, jihadist, but obviously it wasn't a terror attack. Secondly, Libya doesn't have a government, Egypt does, and that's a big difference, which is why we're sending our Marines into Libya. We can't rely on any government, it doesn't exist. And I think we ought to beef up our presence in Cairo, whether the government supports it or not, with Marines. But the onus of protection ought to be on the government in Cairo. And that's where I think the focus has to be. This is a government, it's an allied government, it's an elected government, but it's led by a Muslim Brotherhood member who is clearly not friendly to the United States. He's been in Tehran, and we have to make clear that this cannot be tolerated. The Brotherhood has called for a demonstration after prayers on Friday. And I think it has to be incumbent on the president to impress on the Egyptians that if anything happens, this entire relationship, including the $1 billion of forgiveness of debt that we had been discussing, is off the table. It's a time to be really tough and to draw red lines here in Egypt, because otherwise there's going to be no way that we can sustain either our presence there or our relationship.
I'm going to talk about the politics of this statement from the Cairo embassy and what Mitt Romney said about it. But Charles, what about that thought? You talked about it yesterday, about the initial, and we reported it on this show, the initial statement from the embassy, and then the fallout from it.
The initial statement was a disgrace at the time. It remains a disgrace at the time. There were other events, of course, in Libya, which have cast a shadow over that, and they superseded it in a sense because of the tragic death of wonderful public servants. It doesn't change the fact that U.S. Embassy, whether cleared with Washington or not, that's a ridiculous distinction, speaks on behalf of the United States on the soil of Egypt, and it was apologizing instead of standing up and saying we're a free country and we say what we want and we don't police our internet and our speech. And I think that the video was a complete irrelevancy. What was relevant here was the date. The movie wasn't made yesterday. It didn't, arrive on the scene. The date was 9/11. It was a message from jihadists in Egypt and Libya that Al-Qaeda is alive and we can attack you, and we will. This was the 9/11/12 attacks. It had nothing to do with the video.
Yeah, let me be clear. I want to be clear. It had everything to do with the date. That's the reason for the attacks. I'm saying the video was used in an effort to get people to show up at the embassy. That's how you get 1,500 people there. You have an information operation and you say, we know that we can instigate these jihadists by selling them this bogus story about some stupid video in the United States. So in that sense, it's not irrelevant.